Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Kicking off with our latest explores, we travelled from down south to the north for a trip to Sandal Castle. Sandal Castle is in the town of Wakefield in South Yorkshire and is quite the mystery to those who choose to visit this amazing site. So much has now disappeared that we have to use our imagination to remember this once majestic fortress that would have overlooked the town of Wakefield and dominated the surroundings, as well as having its moment in history with the Battle of Wakefield fought nearby. So join us as we explore and find its long lost history. Once walking around the gravel paths, a glance on our right hand side shows us a large farmer's field. This was actually part of a battlefield site, which once on the 30th of December was a place for destruction and death. And it's quite odd now to see the fields bare and lifeless. The first ditch we encounter is whilst we walk across the now modern walkway to the bailey and the earlier buildings. In its beginnings, the original castle would have been a wooden structure built on top of the artificial earthwork mound or motte, with a wooden palisade surrounding it. The castle was originally built by William de Warenne, who had received the manor of Wakefield from the then King Henry I in 1106. After this time, there wasn't much evidence to suggest the exact date of the stone castle structure that we see today, but there are some references to stone supply between 1270 and 1275, so it's known that construction was done around that time period. It was one of two castles built to defend the crossing point of the River Calder. The other castle is on Low Hill and it can be seen in the distance from Sandal. But the first record of a castle here at Sandal comes in at around the 12th century. The motte at Sandal was raised to 10 metres and a 7-metre deep moat that was surrounding it. Timber motte and bailey castles were often converted into stone if they were used for longer periods, and Sandal creates a great example of this. It should be remembered that the castles were also tax gathering centres, as well as the defensive structures for the surrounding lands. William the Conqueror was the first to popularise the inland revenue. The castle builders and owners were the powerful de Warenne family, the Earls of Surrey, who held the castle right up until 1361, to then be put into royal ownership of Edward III. They were one family with over 8 generations and over 300 years of history. The de Warenne family has a fascinating history, right at the heart of English politics, with strategic marriages forging links with some of the greatest families in England, Scotland and France. The castle then passed on to Edward's son, Edmund, who was made the first Duke of York in 1385, and the castle was then eventually in the possession of Richard Plantagenet, who became the third Duke of York. Richard was a leading English baron and claimant to the throne during the Wars of the Roses. He ordered the building works to make Sandal Castle suitable as a base for a permanent household in the north. His defeat, though, at Bosworth in 1485 brought an end to any further building works at the castle. The main earthworks that were made from stone were constructed around 1240, and it consists of a privy chamber, a great hall, a great chamber and various lodging chambers. Most of the stone walls have since disappeared, but the west wall of the Great Hall and the southwest wall of the lodging chamber still remain. At one end of the chambers is a turret that once provided access to the curtain wall and a rooftop walkway. The original stone keep was circular, with 4 towers each that were 4 stories high, with 2 of them close together to be able to form a gatehouse. Inside the east tower, it contained a well that was 37 metres deep, and the double-walled keep would have had your usual guard rooms, servants' quarters and storerooms. All of the tower rooms had guard robes that were designed to flow on the outer walls of the keep. The main circle provided the living rooms and the towers or turrets to the private accommodation, and at a later date 2 drum towers were built at the end of a passageway projecting into the bailey to give greater protection to the keep entrance, and a barbican was constructed beyond these. an unusual feature of military architecture in English castles. The bailey or the castle courtyard had a number of buildings around its outer perimeter. These buildings catered for business, entertaining and communal meals. The latter took place on the first floor of the Great Hall. One wall of this is still existent and is one of the most visible aspects of the castle remains today. Some of the castle staff slept here in the Great Hall at night. To the east of the hall were private rooms for the Earl and his family. And today the west of the hall can be seen with its foundations of a larder, kitchen, bakehouse and brewery. The constable supervised the castle and resided in buildings near the gatehouse. The later main stone phase shows that the lord occupied the keep. His immediate entourage were also in the barbican, whilst the rest occupied the bailey. Near the barbican are the remains of a bakehouse that was built by Richard III. You can still see some evidence of a large oven, which is super interesting, and at the bottom of the moat is a doorway that might have been intended as a sally port, what's known as a secret exit for escaping a siege, or for launching an attack on an unsuspecting enemy. Lower below you get to see and still walk the impressive barbican, which was built on a rocky island in the middle of the deep ditch between the motte and the bailey. On one side of the motte you can see the foundations of two round towers that once guarded a drawbridge between the keep and the barbican. The barbican at Sandal was inside the bailey. It was an impressive 3-storey tower with its own gate and portcullis, giving that extra line of defence between the main entrance gate and the keep. On the 21st of December in 1460, Richard reached his own fortress here at Sandal. He had sent some men towards the Lancastrian camp at Pontefract, just 9 miles away, but they were defeated. So York sent for help to his son Edmund, but before any reinforcements could arrive, Richard decided to sortie from the castle on the 30th of December. It's not really known why York disbanded the castle when they had perfect vantage on the enemies. Instead, Richard led his men from the castle and marched down the present Many Gates Lane towards the Lancastrians head-on to the north, and instructed his men to attack. Richard engaged to the enemies as the leader to his front, and his army from the rear, but the Lancastrians outnumbered, overwhelmed and surrounded them. Once off the low flat ground, he was ambushed, and he and his second son Edmund were slaughtered, along with over 3,000 men by a force that was 3 times the size of his. As a further humiliation to their defeat, Richard was beheaded, and his head was taken as a trophy to York, put on a spike above Micklegate Bar, which is known as Traitor's Gate, and a paper crown was placed on his head saying, "Let York overlook the town of York." Richard's son Edward defeated the Lancastrians in the bloody Battle of Towton the following year, and took the throne as Edward VI. It was Edward's brother Richard III who made Sandal Castle his power base in the north of England, and strengthened the defences, and at the same time made the castle more comfortable as his home. He had built a polygonal keep and added in a bakehouse. After Richard's death, the castle went into decline once more. The castle was held by the Crown during the Civil War, but after a siege by parliamentary forces, it was successful that the castle was slighted to make it more systematically useless. Although Sandal Castle wasn't the grandest of all castles in the land, it was still unique and special in its own rights. Mainly because of its strategic position, its high vantage point allowed for early warning signs of an oncoming enemy. Especially on a good day, you can really see why they built the castle here. You're able to see in all directions for miles across. And what I loved about visiting here is that it was completely free and perfect for all of the family to come and enjoy, or you could just have a wander by yourself to soak in the surroundings. Another added bonus was the free parking and the fact that it's wheelchair accessible, apart from the Bailey and the Barbican, but the area is quite extensive and that you're able to still get a good idea of how it looks. After viewing Breckham, we were totally blown away by this site. From the ground it's still impressive, although ruinous, but from the air, wow. It reminded me of Castle Acre in Norfolk, with its earthworks. Either way, a visit to Sandal Castle should very much be on your list if it isn't already. So that's it for this week. We hope you've enjoyed walking around Sandal Castle with us, and you've got some inspiration for a visit. Please be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel or joining our memberships using the links in our bio below to support the channel. We want to say a big thank you to our patrons and to our channel members for all of their support and love. We'll see you in the next one. Till next time.